Speak on the Show, episode 31. I'm back, baby. Y'all ready? Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. Let's go. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Speak On. I am your boy, R.W. Coolins, first and foremost, giving honor to the guy who allows me to come at you in this manner on a weekly basis. How's everybody doing out there? I'm back. I'm refreshed. Batteries recharged. It's time to go. We're going into this last quarter. Well, we already in the last quarter of 2022 calendar year, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to get into this. OT, my brother, good morning. Good morning. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate the support. Let's get these formalities out the way because I got some information I need to pass on today. Midterm elections, that's what we're going to be talking about. But I got a couple other things I want to touch on before we get there. But here, let's get into this. rwcoolins.com. That's the website. You can go there, follow, share, do what you do on over all social media platforms. We're broadcasting live on YouTube and Facebook this morning. If you want to listen to the audio after the show, you can go to Spreaker.com, rwcoolins, or you can go to Apple iTunes, Speak on the Show. Download, listen, follow, do what you do. Every Saturday morning, that's what we do, y'all. That's what we do. As we do every Saturday morning. A little confused this morning. It's been a minute. Brian Hoodie, good morning, bro. Good morning. Appreciate the support. Call in number 844-904-2665. That's 844-904-2665. No matter what the situation is, let your voice be heard. All we ask is say what you mean what you say. We come in as friends. We leave as friends. We're family. That's what we do here on the Speak on the Show. We're a community. We're here as a community on the Speak on It Show. Vacation, y'all. Oh, it was so relaxing. Y'all missed y'all for 2 weeks. I was going to chime in last week, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to take another week, get my battery totally recharged. It was on about 75%. I needed to get it at 100, right? But I would tell everybody out there, when you decide to take time off, from your job or whatever you may be doing, you decide to take a vacation. Take a vacation. Don't do nothing. Plan something, but sometimes we take vacation. There's so much that we want to do on our vacation that when we come back, we're tired. So we go back to work and we're tired from vacation, and then we got a whole workload in front of us and everything. So I would say take the vacation, just do something to relax. Put your feet in the sand somewhere, listen to the water, have a couple of drinks, just relax. Take that time, recharge your battery, and relax. A lot been going on, y'all. There's a lot going on. Midterm elections, 10 days away, baby. 10 days away. November 8th. If you're early voting, get out and early vote if you can in your locations where you live. If you can't, November 8th, that's the day. Make sure you're out there. Make sure you get to the polls. Make sure you do what we're supposed to do as far as making sure that, we're making our voices be heard. Before we get into the midterm elections thing, though, I had to put this out there because, let's start here. There's some crazy stuff going on as far as people trying to harm people. Everybody probably seen the report where Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, her husband, somebody broke in her house, beat him up with a hammer, fractured his skull. He's in the hospital trying to recover. It happened like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Coast time, California. He walked in the house, whatever he was doing, he was yelling out, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" Just like they were doing when they were at the Capitol. We have to step back for a minute and look at what's going on in this country right now with these situations. We have people out here that are going after politicians at this point because they didn't get their way in a fair election. Let's analyze this for a minute now. We had a fair election. There was no evidence of fraud in a wide, broad range. But we have people out here who are listening to these continued lies from politicians that are sitting in these offices on the other side, and they're going out here harming people, harming family members of the politicians who they don't like, who they feel they did not get their way in the last election. I don't get it. I probably won't get it. We'll get deeper into this as we get into this midterm elections because I want you guys to be safe out there while you're out there. But what I want to do right now, real quickly, TC, my brother, more appreciate support. What I'm gonna do real quickly is this. Let's get away from this midterm election. Let's talk about R.W. Coons for a minute. And I say this is my opinion, this is my view, and this is how I see it. And I'm gonna read some different things too. There's a lot going on around comments, anti-Semitic comments made by Kanye West. Kanye West has lost a lot of his sponsors, a lot of people he was in business with, clothing, Adidas, Gap, anything you can think of. It's all looks like it's tumbling down. Russell Simmons, I watched the interview with him, and he mentioned the fact that he thinks Kanye is doing this on purpose to get out of these contracts that he's having with these people. I don't know. I'm just going by things that I've read. But the biggest part of it was the anti-Semitic comments that he made on the drink champs. This is the same person who at one time said slavery was a choice. I'm a little confused by the reaction of the anti-Semitic comments per se, compared to the reaction of when he said slavery was a choice. Not by our community, but as the United States and the world as a whole. And I say that because of this. When someone comes out and says slavery was a choice, there's crickets. Only people you hear talking loudly are the people that look like us. When there's supposedly anti-Semitic statements made, there's a whirlwind of press, there's a whirlwind of everything else, and there's a cancel culture per se that they're using it with Kanye West. Now, I'm not saying in no way that anything that he said, he should have said or should not have said. That's his choice. What he's lost in this process was his choice. He chose to speak. That means the consequences are going to follow what he did. But I don't do comparisons, as I always say, but I'm giving you facts as far as the fact of why is it such an uproar when he says something anti-Semitic, like they always try to put on Louis Farrakhan, whenever he says something about the way and what he knows to be true by his readings. But when Kanye West says something anti-Semitic, he shut down all these people's sponsors, run away from him, everything like this. But when he says slavery was a choice and he talks down about his own people, there's crickets. Only from us are we the ones in the uproar saying Kanye lost his mind, so on and so forth. He's mentally ill. Why is he doing this? All those type things. But I bring it back again to when Kanye West came out with Candace Owens wearing a shirt that said White Lives Matter, to push back against the concept of what was going on when Black Lives Matter during the George Floyd murder. And there was no full outrage about the White Lives Matter shirt. There was only support for Kanye West when he said White Lives Matter, because it went against everything that was being said about what Black Lives Matter stood for in the eyes of those on the other side. Now, you wear what you want. Like he went and wore a MAGA hat. We were in uproar about that because it just didn't seem right. But for some folks, what Kanye West is doing feeds into the narrative of what they want it to be. I'm not saying, as I mentioned, he's right. I'm not saying he's wrong. That's his choice. We all have a choice in how we do things and what we decide to do. But at the same time, I sat down for your purposes, not mine, for yours. And I watched the documentary that Candace Owens did called The Greatest Lie Ever Sold, George Floyd and the Rise of BLM. I sat down and watched this documentary out of curiosity of exactly what point she was trying to make about Black Lives Matter, people stealing from Black Lives Matter, taking the money or whatever, where the money was going and everything. And I came away from that documentary with the understanding that people like Kanye West, people like Candace Owens, because if you notice, Candace Owens has not spoken out in support of Kanye West since this anti-Semitic thing is going on. I don't know if you've noticed that, but let me let you know. No one who was on Kanye West's side, and I'm digressing here, when he wore the White Lives Matter shirt, is on his side now that he's made these quote unquote anti-Semitic comments. Nobody's supporting him now. They were all supporting him when he had the White Lives Matter shirt. Just something I've observed. But going back to the documentary, Candace Owens went out and she's interviewing these people. She's finding out about Black Lives Matter and George Floyd. She tried to say the fentanyl killed him or whatever was in the system. All the things that they tried to debunk before and to make George Floyd seem like it was his fault that he died. She did in this documentary, just in a different way. But the one thing that jumped out at me in this documentary is she said the greatest lie ever sold, but they never went into detail about what they were talking about or how this lie was sold about George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement. The other part that didn't ever make sense to me in her documentary was she never talked to anyone that is in the Black Lives Matter movement at that level about what went on, where the money was going. None of that conversation ever happened. Normally, you talk to the people that are being accused of these misdoings if you want the information directly from the horse's mouth. Never happened. The other part is she went and talked to George Floyd's roommates. She went and talked to George Floyd's roommates that he had at the time. Big Al, good morning, my brother. Good morning. Ride safe, bro. Ride safe. She went and talked to his roommates that he had at the time, and they went into how they used to pray together all the time and these different things and all this kind of stuff. And then something came up about a car that he had in the driveway that they couldn't do anything with because they didn't have the title now that he's dead. Then they also talked about how no rent was paid from the time he died up until the time of his interview. So you're putting the rent that he used to pay now that he's passed away. They wanted to put it on Black Lives Matter or the family that they should have paid the rent after he died. Or they should have done something to move the car. My question was, they went through all these things, but nobody ever mentioned that they talked to the family about the car being there. They never talked about the fact that, you know, when a person dies and he's no longer there, he's no longer required to pay rent if he's not living there. It's just like if you decide to leave, unless you're on the lease. So all these things that she did in this documentary, nothing that she said made any sense to the point of saying it was the greatest lie ever sold or anything like that. And I bring all this up to say this. It's amazing to me at this point where we see the people, the Candace Owens, the Kanye West, the different people who push back against us as a people in their beliefs, in their political beliefs and whatever they think, to make it seem like everything we do is wrong, or that when we do something or someone that looks like us does something nefarious with funding from a fundraiser, a GoFundMe, or anything like that, that is elevated to a whole nother level compared to the people who took out these $1 million PPP loans and never gave it to any employees and anything like that. I just don't understand the mindset of a Candace Owens or a Kanye West or some of these other folks who straddle that fence to ride on the other side to make themselves kind of stand out, to try to distance themselves from their culture, from their people, from their families with these understandings and these beliefs. Just something I observed, just something I wanted to put out there, because at the end of the day, when these people look in the mirror, they see a Black person. At the end of the day, these people have a Black mother, they have a Black father, they have black grandparents, and so on and so on and so forth. I understand if you have elevated per se yourself to a different level financially or in the circles you run in and everything like that. But at the end of the day, each time that you choose to speak out against your own people, you're also speaking out against your mother, your father, your grandparents, your ancestors, and so on and so forth. We can all have a different understanding of how things should be or what we think things should be. But we should never get to the point of when our understanding blurs the lines of who we are, where we've come from, who our ancestors were, and what they fought for. This is where my problem comes in with those type folks. When we bring up the Clarence Thomases or the Herschel Walkers and all of that, what gets me about that is it's like they've forgotten everything that our ancestors and their parents and their grandparents and all the people through their bloodlines fought for them to be able to practice the freedoms that they have. But at the same time, while they have these freedoms, they choose those freedoms to downplay and down talk everyone who looks like them because we have a difference of opinion. I'm just putting it out there. You judge it how you want to judge it. Big Al, not going there, bro. Not going there. And those are the things where we have difference of opinions, but your difference of opinion should never get you to the point where you minimize the impact of everything that we've done to this point. I just don't get it, and I probably never will. It's just the way it goes. It's the way some people's mentality is. It's the way some people think. But when it's all said and done, as we see with this Kanye West thing, as much as they supported him when he was speaking loudly about the negativity that he feels is in the Black community, they all clapped. But when he spoke about the business practices of Hollywood and different things like that, that went against what people don't consider, and when he speaks out saying that it's anti-Semitic, what his thoughts were, now they've turned against him. Stand in your truth. Stand in your truth, how you feel, how you view things. Understand it's not everyone's not going to agree with you. But at the same time, as long as you're comfortable with where you stand, doesn't matter who's clapping, doesn't matter who's going against you. Just know that your truth, there's going to be consequences for when you speak your truth. Be able to deal with it. And this is going to, I seen this article dealing with the Kanye West thing, where this guy had bought over 40 pair of Yeezys. Why he bought them, I don't know. In my opinion, they're ugly, but that's just me. That's just my opinion. But he bought 40 pair of Yeezys over the time period that they've been out. When this thing came out where they said, Kanye did his interview on Drink Champs, they said he had anti-Semitic comments and everything like that. Then this person, after spending $15,000, upwards of $15,000 with an average price of $375 for a pair of shoes, he decided to burn them. You just burned up $15,000. You're not hurting Kanye West. You're not hurting anybody that manufactured those shoes. They've been paid. That's why I've never understood why when someone leaves a team, like when they burn LeBron's jerseys, the people have made the money already. Once you bought it, the money's there. They already spent that money. But you take it upon yourself to burn a jersey. What have you just done? You just burned $375. You've been better not buying the jersey and just taking $375 or however much a jersey costs or a pair of shoes cost and just burn the money rather than burning the shoes. Just an opinion of mine. But I also seen this part with this woman named Demetria K. Demetria K had this statement that she made, and I'm going to read it. And you draw your own conclusions. Black people, if we're canceling Kanye for being harmful to us, then we also need to cancel female rappers who promote WAP, being a super freaky girl, big D energy, city girl culture, and male rappers who brag about taking lives and selling dope. Why are we selective in our outrage? And I just found that interesting because it can't be both. Both things can't be true at the same time in most people's opinions. But we have to have an either or. I don't agree, and you've heard me say many times, with the rap lyrics that come out with the B word, the H word, and the women expressing themselves as far as freaky girl and all that kind of stuff. If that's what you want to listen to, that's what you want to listen to. But at the same time, this is an expression through entertainment. Blurring the lines of whether we support Kanye and what he did and what he said compared to what we support as far as what the musicians do and what they say. Like we talk about the R. Kelly incidents and his music, and compared to what they say he did and what he was charged for and all these different things, the lines get blurred there as far as how our support goes. It's not a one size fits all when we talk about these things. But you have to step back for a minute and understand, if people are canceling Kanye, it's because Kanye has gotten to a point where they can't tolerate the Kanye from what they used to know to who he's become. That's all. It has nothing to do where you blur the lines about rap lyrics and whatever. When he was making his music, Gold Digger with Jamie Foxx, no, everybody was singing it. College Dropout album sold so many albums, everybody was fine with it. When he was producing music for other folks, everybody was fine with it. But when he comes out with these different views, now we want to cancel him. Where's the balance? And he's not being canceled by us because of the anti-Semitic comments. We were canceling him, most people, once he said slavery was a choice. But while we were canceling him, as I mentioned, per se, other people were applauding him. While we were canceling him for the White Lives Matter shirt or the MAGA hat, other folks were applauding him. But now that he's made anti-Semitic statements, now they're the cancelers. And most of us, some in certain circles, are applauding him. Not because of the anti-Semitic comments he made, but because of the truth of some of the comments that he made. Just putting it out there. Like I said, I don't agree. I don't disagree. That's his choice. If you know your history and you go back and read your history about, listen to what he said and go back and read the history of what's going on, that's where your balance comes in. You have to understand exactly the history of why he said what he said, whether it's true or not, and dig into that. But most of the time, we just go by what the media and everybody else tells us rather than reading for ourselves what the facts are compared to what the person said. That's all. So I'm gonna get off that soapbox, but I wanted to put that out there. It's just something that just was not sitting well with my soul. That's all. Midterm elections. Let's get into this. Be careful, y'all. When you're going out to here to these polls or whether you're going to drop boxes, be careful. We got drop box vigilantes out here. In Arizona, a federal judge rejected a request by Retirees Association that he issue a temporary restraining order targeted at conduct outside of Arizona drop box locations that some voters have described as intimidating. So what's going on out there in Arizona? You got people sitting across the street from drop boxes, watching people drop their ballots off in the drop box. And they're considering that be intimidating because they're over there. They got vests on, they got hoods on, they got, not hoods like that, but they got helmets on, they got face masks on. They look like vigilantes standing out there watching, and people are being intimidated. There was one I seen on a video where a guy pulled up to go vote, and he's walking, he happened to look over and he seen these guys standing there. He got back in his car and left. So what this suit was about was to diminish or eliminate these people from being able to do that near voting locations, polling locations, because it's like they're intimidating you not to vote. And the judge overruled it. U.S. District Judge Michael T. Lubordi said in an opinion Friday that the association, the Arizona Alliance for Retired Americans, had not provided the court with any evidence that defendants' conduct constitutes a true threat. And he also went in and said, on this record, defendants have not made any statements threatening to commit acts of unlawful violence to a particular individual or group of individuals. There is no evidence that defendants have publicly posted any voters' names, home addresses, occupations, or other personal information. Lubardi wrote, he pointed to assertions from Jennings that her group's volunteers follow the law and to social media posts instructing them not to engage with voters. Even if these statements are mere window dressing, a reasonable listener could not interpret Mrs. Jennings' social media pronouncements that alleged mules, which is what they call these people that are watching the polls, will shrink back into the darkness following her drop box initiative as true threats. The judge also concluded that the conduct did not fall into any traditional recognized category of voter intimidation. Now, we all know that after all this voter fraud, conspiracy theories, and everything like that, that this was on the horizon of coming. We all knew it. This is not anything new. Anytime that you've gone to vote up until today, up until you vote this time, I want you to think back. Whenever you went to vote, and there was people in the parking lot because you got to be a certain distance from the building, from the polling location. There were certain people out there trying to sway your vote before you walked into the voting booth. That's one aspect of it. You're walking up, the Republicans are out there, the Democrats out there, they say vote for such and such, they vote. It's conversation. But it could be misconstrued as a form of intimidation. But when you're out there dressed like a vigilante, dressed like the people that stormed the Capitol on January 6th, what does that say about what you're trying to do? And for this judge to overrule it, I understand all the evidence is not there. However, we already know what the purpose of them being there is. So there has to be some understanding of the purpose rather than what their actions are for being there. You don't have to lay hands on somebody if you're standing in their face because the intimidation factor is there. You're trying to keep people from going to the polls because you would rather win an election. And this is what it comes into. The Republicans and those conspiracy theorists would rather win an election by not allowing and not having the people actually vote the way they should and clean and clear. They would rather win an election that way because it's about power rather than allowing you to vote and the voters to say who they prefer to be in the positions of power after the election. We've seen this January 6th when it was time to certify the votes. We've seen this over and over and over again. And my problem with it is this. These people know what they're doing. The politicians encourage them to do this because they can't do it. But the problem I have with it is they only go to certain areas to intimidate those folks that are going to vote. If we go back, now that we're up to the election time period, if you go back to what rules they put into place after this last election in Atlanta, in Georgia, you can't take water and food and give it to people while they're standing in line. You can't provide that, no matter how hot it is, no matter what condition they are. None of those things can happen. Otherwise, it's considered a crime. They put that on the books, but they never put anything on the books about voter intimidation in the area of the polling places. Think about that for a minute. These are the things that are going on that we don't pay attention to until it's in our face. Gary Burns, good morning, my brother. Appreciate you. Big Cheese, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. But those are the things that we need to pay attention to. So I'm telling you guys out there, now that we're in this time of early voting and the election on November 8th, if you know of people that could be intimidated, or you have family members that may be of the elder that need someone to go with them to help them get to the polls, to do what they want to do it the right way that they've always done it without feeling intimidated, then we need to step in, because if the intimidation is not going to be taken care of, then we need to take care of it ourselves and take these people to the polls so they feel safe. It started with intimidating and threatening election workers. Now it's branched out to the point of intimidating election participants. We have to make sure that we're making our people feel safe. It doesn't have to be in your neighborhood. It could be anywhere around these these polling locations. If you can vote early, vote early. If you don't want to wait until that day, the November 8th, or if you want to wait until November 8th, make sure you're being safe out there, because you don't know what the intention of these people are. I understand this judge is looking at all the particulars of the case and what they can prove, what they can't prove. They can't prove they were doing this, but at the end of the day, we know what this is all about. And here's something you need to pay attention to. This is happening in Arizona. Arizona is the location, the state, where you have a woman named Kari Lake running for governor. Kari Lake is an election denier. Kari Lake has already said if she's elected, no election will be certified if she doesn't feel, listen what I just said now, if she doesn't feel that the election results are what they should be. Not by what the people voted, but if she doesn't feel. And she's not the only one running for governor. She's not the only one. And they have other folks, as I've mentioned on here many times, running for Secretary of State who oversee the elections. These people are hell-bent with the fact that they want the elections to be the result that they want, not what the people choose to make them. This is where we need to be cognizant. This is where we need to do our due diligence. And I know I've been talking about this voting for a long time, and I know we're getting to that point now where we won't have to talk about it anymore. However, we have an election every 2 years. Presidential election is every 4 years. Every 2 years, you have a midterm, and then you have the presidential election. Midterm, presidential election. Midterm, presidential election. And in most cases, we don't go out for the midterms. We wait until the big one. We got to get out of that practice. We have to start participating in every election that comes up, because they're taking away our rights slowly but surely. And I'm going to give a shout out. I'm going to give a charge, rather, to all those lawyers, all the lawyers out there who see these things happening, who see these voting rights being taken away, step up. Being a lawyer is not always about how much money you can make. Being a lawyer is taking care and defending the law as it's written before they start changing things to sway to their side. If you're a lawyer and the only time you want to be a lawyer is when it's going to benefit your pockets rather than the Constitution or the right of the people, you need to reevaluate some things. All money ain't good money. Let's just be honest. All money ain't good money. I understand you got to make a living, but there's some things you should be defending on principle. On principle. We see all these lawsuits going back and forth to the sending up to the Supreme Court. Lindsey Graham doesn't want to testify in front of the grand jury down in Georgia about the election fraud that was going on back in the last election, of what happened about Donald Trump calling in asking that they need to find 1,100 some votes, 11,000 votes or whatever it was. He doesn't feel he has to testify. He called those people 2-3 times, but he's saying what he talked to them about was election, making sure everything was right. Had nothing to do with the interference or making sure that they found the votes that they needed, is what he's saying. If that's the case, then you should have no problem testifying. He doesn't want to testify. He's so hell-bent on not testifying that he took it to the Supreme Court. There are so many cases right now sitting at the Supreme Court to deal with elections interference under the Donald Trump umbrella of the last election, that they're every time they get shot down at these appellate courts and the lower case courts and the district courts, the first thing they want to do once they run through all that process is send it to the Supreme Court. Why? Because the Supreme Court is packed with people with the same understanding and same way that they want to do business. Most of the ones that are going to vote for them were put in by Republicans. And them being Republicans, they feel there's a certain allegiance. But the law is the law. The law is the law. But we are looking at these things and we're not paying attention. And I'll give you a prime example. I got my ballot and we're going through our ballots. And on the ballot, there's a lot of judge positions. Family court, all these different things. But all the courts that these judges are running for that position, there's nobody running against them. There's one name. One name. So when you vote, there's only one choice for these judge positions. So they get into this position, whether it's family court or whatever, and they stay there. Then they go to the next level. Then they go to the next level. And the next thing you know, they're in a position where it's a life term. They're not going to leave that position until they get ready. And nobody pays attention to all the cases they tried at this level, unless you're Ketanji Brown, and then they want to investigate all the cases you had before you were up for the Supreme Court. But in most cases, they don't look at all the cases that you've judged at this level. But some of these people at this level are the same ones that are putting people behind bars for 38 years that didn't do anything. And then we find out, and I got a story about that coming up. But those are the ones that are running for these judge positions at this level, who plan to ascend to this level and start making policy and making judgments on whether voting rights should still be in effect, whether abortion rights should still be in effect, and so on and so on and so forth. These people don't just become Supreme Court justices from here to here. There's steps to this. And what we don't do is we don't pay attention to those at the lower level when they get in to be a judge. We only pay attention to them when they're coming up with the hearings for them to become a Supreme Court judge, or they're appointed as a circuit court judge. Those are the things that we don't pay attention to until it's too late. And then we wonder how they got in there and why they're in there and why they're making the decisions they made, not off of what policy or what the rules and governance is, but because of the political party that actually put them in the position that they're in. These are the things we have to pay attention to more intense. Edward Allen, I never vote for Republican judges. Well, if you look at the ballot, it doesn't say what political party. It says NP in most of them. No party affiliation. They don't tell you They don't tell you, and you don't find out until they get ready to go to the district court or the Supreme Court, and then you find out the Republican or the Democrat or the conservative or the liberal. You don't find those titles out until they start ascending through the ranks. Then you realize, wait a minute. If he's this Republican at this point or this Democrat at this point, that explains all the cases that they viewed at this level is why this person did 25 years and someone that did the same crime only did 5 months of probation. Those are the steps to this. And that's what we got to pay more attention to. Not only the people being elected, but the people that are going into these as these judges, because you or me or someone in our family may be in front of one of these judges who is making decisions not based on law, but on belief and biases that they've grown to understand to be true, because the law is only accountable when it's for certain people, not for everybody when you get in front of these judges. Federal officials on Friday warned that domestic violent extremists pose a heightened threat to the 2020 midterm elections. In a joint intelligence assessment sent to state and local officials and obtained by CNN, the bulletin released by the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, U.S. Capitol Police, and National Counterterrorism Center says that perceptions of election fraud would likely result in heightened threats of violence. The bulletin did not list any specific credible threats. The midterm elections are occurring at a time when the nation is experiencing what has been described as the most volatile, complex, and dynamic threat environment in recent times. Former DHS Intel Chief and Counterterrorism Coordinator John Cohen told CNN, communities across the nation continue to experience mass casualty attacks and other acts of targeted violence by individuals inspired by conspiracy theories. These people are out here doing these things based on lies. Let's just break it down what it is. They're doing these things based on lies, and they're taking it out on the people who are just trying to do and conduct the rights that they have as far as going to the polls and voting. But there's people that have these conspiracy theories that they believe, who feel that you don't have a right to vote. I don't have a right to vote. And even if we do have a right to vote, if it's not for who they think we should be voting for, it shouldn't count. That's where we are in the United States of America. Herschel Walker. You know, if there's ever been someone who is not qualified to be a politician. Now we talk about people all the time where they should be a politician, where they shouldn't. But if we've ever had a poster child for someone not qualified to be a politician, it would be Herschel Walker. And we all know it. They all know it. But this is what Lindsey Graham said this week. You know, Lindsey Graham out of South Carolina, the one that don't want to testify in front of Georgia grand jury about the election. He said, and I quote, "They're afraid of Herschel Walker because if Herschel Walker wins, that means we're not racist." Let me read that again. They're afraid of Herschel Walker because if Herschel Walker wins, that means we, as the Republican Party, are not racist. And if you're a Republican, aren't you tired of being called a racist all the time by everybody? No Tommy Tuberville. Well, he shouldn't be qualified either. I mean, let's just be real. But this is what Lindsey Graham said the other day. And he was sitting with Herschel Walker at the time. And he said, pointing his finger at Herschel Walker doing an interview with Hannity. He said, Walker changes the narrative that the GOP is a party of racists. What happens when the Republican Party elects and nominates Herschel Walker, an African-American Black Heisman Trophy winner, right? Olympian. It destroys the whole narrative, he claimed. In other words, look at what having this Black man around will do for us. So let me get this straight now. Wig, what's up, bro? Appreciate the support. No, he's not qualified. He's not qualified. Jeez, continue your journey to provide the information we need. I shall, my brother. I shall. So basically what Lindsey Graham sat up there and said, this is our Black representative that we chose for the Republican Party. And if he wins, we ain't racist no more. Listen to that concept of what he just said. So what he's basically saying, let's break this down in simple terms. If Herschel Walker is elected as a Republican senator over Raphael Warnock, then that means that the Republican Party cannot be considered racist. Let me put it in simple terms the way I understand it. What he's telling me through history of what we know to be true, if you take the character, that Samuel L. Jackson played in Django Unchained, being the house Negro per se, because him and Leonardo DiCaprio's character were so close, and he could talk to him and let him know what's going on about what the slaves are doing and what they're talking about and everything like that, being that he's okay talking to him in that manner as a slave, a house Negro, that means that I'm not racist, even though I got 500 slaves on my plantation. Now that's extreme, but break it down in simple terms. If I have one black person within my realm, does that not make me racist? Or does that make me not racist because I talk to one, or I have one black friend, or anything like that? As Donald Trump said in his election that time, look at my black friend, look at my Negro friend, look at my Negro. Come on. And I will say this, anyone in Georgia, black, white, Hispanic, whatever nationality you may be, if you're in Georgia and you go to the election, to the polls, and you check the box to elect Herschel Walker as your senator, your representative in the Senate over Raphael Warnock, not because he's qualified, but because he's a Republican and that's who you think is going to do the best job for you, not understanding and look at the fact that he's a puppet. If you check that box for Herschel Walker, that says more about you than it does about them putting him up as a nominee. Let's just break it down in simple terms. If you choose to put this person and vote for this person on your election ballot, that says more about you than it does about the politicians that have put him up there as a puppet, not because he can do the job, but because they want the power of Georgia and the Senate back in their good graces. That's it. And if you check that box for Herschel Walker, that I'm just going to leave it at that. I would never try to influence or tell anyone who to vote for. But in this case, I will tell you, he is not only not qualified, he shouldn't even be on the ballot at all. And the only reason he's on the ballot is they wanted to put a black Republican against a black Democrat in the state of Georgia. Why? Because of in the way that Raphael Warnock became senator, and it changed the dichotomy of the Senate in the last election. Remember, Raphael Warnock was in a special election in order to get put in that position. And if I remember correctly, he was up against Kelly Loeffler or Perdue, one of those two. And if you check the box for Herschel Walker, check yourself. Check yourself. And good morning, sis. Good morning. Appreciate support. I just don't. And for Lindsey Graham, well, let's just be real. This is nothing new. This is nothing new with Lindsey Graham. Nothing at all. Lindsey Graham is the same person who stands staunchly behind, what is his name, Scott? Is it Tim Scott down in South Carolina? It's the only Republican black senator right now? And you ain't heard nothing from him about anything. He just sitting there, told him, now you stay on them back now. Stay in the back. We'll bring you out when we need to. We ain't heard from him since they were trying to do their Policing Crime Act. We ain't heard from him since when they said they were going to pass, and they pushed it by the wayside, and everything was agreed upon. And then all of a sudden they said, no, that's not going to work. Those are the things that I'm talking about. Those are the things we need to pay more attention to. It just doesn't make sense. And as I talk about these judges, let's transition from this election. Let's get into this. Mr. Maurice Hastings. Mr. Maurice Hastings' release comes more than 20 years after his initial request to have his DNA tested was denied. On Friday, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office announced that Maurice Hastings was freed as his 1988 murder conviction was vacated. Hastings' attorneys from the Los Angeles Innocence Project at California State University, Los Angeles, asked on October 20th that his conviction be overturned and that he be released right away. The Conviction Integrity Unit also joined the petition, which was later granted by Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge William C. Ryan. Another case. Mr. Hastings served 38 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit. 38 years. He was convicted of a crime back in 1988. He's 69 years old now. Mr. Hastings said, I prayed for many years that this day would come. I'm just looking forward to moving forward. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not standing up here a bitter man, but I just want to enjoy my life now while I have it. Have you ever noticed that this is our statements about the injustices done to us all the time? I'm not bitter. I'm just glad this day has come. I'm just looking forward to moving forward. "38 years for a crime he didn't commit." And this is his statement. And then you have the justice people come up. What has happened to Mr. Hastings is a terrible injustice. The justice system is not perfect. And when we learn of new evidence which causes us to lose confidence in a conviction, it is our obligation. It is our obligation to act swiftly. It took 38 years. That's not swiftly enough. 38 years. And you're saying to act swiftly? Let's break this down. He spent more than 38 years in prison for Roberta Wademeyer's murder, as well as 2 attempted murders, the DA office said. Roberta's body was found in the trunk of her vehicle, and the cause of death was a single gunshot wound to her head. The coroner conducted a sexual assault examination, which involved swabbing of various body parts, including an oral swab on which semen was detected. Hastings was then officially charged with a special circumstance of murder. A special circumstance of murder. And the DA's office wanted him to get the death penalty. It later denied Hastings' petition for DNA testing as evidence to prove he is innocent back in 2000. So from 1988, let me get this right now. Billy E, Easy E, good morning, bro. Appreciate support. From 1988, when he was convicted, Mr. Hastings knew he didn't commit this crime. He was charged on a special circumstance of murder, and the DA's office wanted him to get the death penalty. They wanted him to get the death penalty. Remember this part. Death penalty is what they wanted. He didn't get that. So from 1988 up to 2000, Mr. Hastings came forward and said, I want DNA test done. Kept getting denied. Kept getting denied. Kept getting denied. Now, mind you, in 1988, when he was convicted, it was a deadlocked jury. Led to a new trial, and another jury convicted Hastings before he was sentenced to life in prison. So he had a trial. The jury was deadlocked. They did another trial. That's when he was convicted. No evidence, no DNA evidence. They found DNA evidence, but there was no DNA evidence to show he was the one that did it at this time in 1988. In 2000, he asked them, y'all need to do a DNA test. Mr. Hastings submitted a claim of innocence with the District Attorney's Conviction Integrity Unit last year and in June of this year. The DNA testing found that the semen on the oral swab was not from Mr. Hastings. Instead, The DNA belonged to a person in the database who had engaged in and been convicted of an armed kidnapping, where he placed his female victim in a trunk of a vehicle, as well as the kidnap, rape, and forcible oral copulation of a young woman, for which he was sentenced to 56 years in custody. That suspect has since died. However, the DA's office said it's working closely with the Inglewood Police Department to investigate the case. Had the jury imposed a death sentence instead of life without the possibility of parole for Mr. Hastings, he may not have lived to see the day that he was exonerated for that murder. The possibility that an innocent person could be executed is real. Our criminal justice system simply has too much room for error, as this case demonstrates. They had DNA evidence in 1988. They never used it to prove his innocence or his guilt. They charged him off a circumstance, special circumstance of murder is what they called it. And they wanted the death penalty. Mr. Hastings served 38 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit because somebody in the district attorney's office, the judge, the lawyers didn't do their damn job, knowing that they had DNA evidence, and all they had to do was swab his mouth and run that test and know for a fact that he did not commit this crime. And they knew that there was someone who had to fit the profile of this same act, this same murder that was serving time already, or that convicted later on, that did the crime. But they didn't do their due diligence for Mr. Hastings to be exonerated for not being the person that did this crime. But 38 years later, they want to bring up the fact that Mr. Hastings did not commit this crime. And if Mr. Hastings wouldn't have stood on his principles in 2000, when he asked him for a DNA test, he would be dead right now if they would have been able to get that death penalty when he first went to jail. And then all they can say is our justice system makes errors sometimes. But it just seems to me, and I'll continue to say this, that the only people that the justice system seems to make these errors are the people that look like me. And not after serving a year, 2 years, 3 years. We're talking 20, 30, 40 years these people have served in jail for crimes they didn't commit. And when they come out, they say, well, our system's messed up. No, the system's not messed up. Let's break this down. Yeah, the system needs to be changed, but it's the people in the system. Because whoever his lawyer was and whoever their prosecuting lawyer was did not do their job as far as making sure that all evidence was presented. The district attorney who oversees these lawyers and oversees these cases and brings them to trial did not do their job, knowing that there was DNA evidence, and they never took his DNA to test it against what they had. And then the judge never asking the question of what evidence was provided, not provided. All these things for 38 years sat dormant because nobody cared about Mr. Hastings. They just wanted a conviction of somebody who committed a murder. And Mr. Hastings was charged because of special circumstance, not because of evidence, but because of special circumstance. And they expect Mr. Hastings to come out, as he did, to say, I prayed for this for many years. I'm not bitter. We should not continue to have to hear our Black men come out of jail after 20, 30 years saying that they're not bitter, being charged for a crime they didn't commit, and thinking it's okay. This does not happen to anybody but us. And then in the same breath, you have a person like Lindsey Graham supporting Herschel Walker, who is not qualified to be any type of politician, or not even qualified to be put in the conversation of holding any type of position, because his integrity is in question for many of the things he's done through his life. But a person like Mr. Hastings, who never did anything that we know of to be true, served 38 years in jail. and the United States of America, the politicians, the white people in America who feel that justice is always served, who were in an uproar when they seen George Floyd killed on national TV when they played that video over and over and over again. And then you got people like Candace Owens that come out and do a documentary trying to say it was fentanyl in the system. He was killed. I don't care what was in the system, he was killed by a person who was being paid to protect and serve people in the community. But nobody wants to talk about that and the injustices that go on continually for people like Mr. Hastings. So you have to ask yourself, when we talk about the overpopulation of the jails, of the prisons, of the people that look like us that are there, how many actually did the crime that they're serving time for? How many? I guarantee, if you sit back and think about all the people you know in your life that have ever served time, long period of time, short period of time, the evidence that was provided did not fit the time that they were sentenced to. And nobody chose to look at it in any other way. But the same crime done by someone that looks completely different is 5 months probation, maybe 6 months probation, a slap on the wrist. And they did the damn crime. But nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody. And I get hell bent when I see these black men serving 20, 30, 40 years in jail for a crime they didn't commit, because like I always say, that could be me. That could be you. That could be my brothers. That could be all the people I served in the military with that I call my brother. Cousins, uncles, anybody. All because they either can't afford a good attorney, or the attorney that they do hire doesn't care, or just simply because he's a black man and he doesn't matter in society. Now, you can get an uproar about what you want about what I say about this, but I'm hell bent on this for the simple fact there's too many cases like this. And they go back too far, where these people have lost a lifetime. I'm sorry. They've lost a lifetime. Parents have probably passed. Friends have passed away. People that they love, they never got to see again because they're locked up for something they did not do. And now they got to come out after 38 years and try to be an upstanding citizen in a community and in an atmosphere that threw them away like they were nothing for 38 years. And now you want them to come back into society like nothing ever happened, like it doesn't matter. And all he got from it was, we're sorry. And I will go out on a limb and say they didn't even say they were sorry. Just like they said in this statement, our justice system gets it wrong sometimes. We make errors. But you don't make errors like that with people of non-color. You never make errors like that of people of non-color, only in the movies. It's the only time you see it. Brian Hoodie, the sad thing that there is no repercussions for the DA and anyone else involved. I can't imagine. I can't imagine you knowing that you didn't do something, being sentenced for it, being locked away for it, screaming at the top of your lungs and continuing to tell people, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. And nobody hears you. Nobody's taking the steps to find out exactly what went on. Nobody's taking the time to go and do an investigation to find out where the evidence was wrong in convicting this person, if there was evidence. They had nothing. They had no evidence showing that he did this. And then 38 years later, they decided to do a DNA test to show that it wasn't him. But you got these media companies that will go out with Candace Owens and do a full investigation to debunk everything about the George Floyd murder and Black Lives Matter. And society is okay with that. We seen that man murdered with our own eyes on video over and over and over again. And they keep wanting to blame it on him. Tells you everything you need to know. Tells you everything you need to know. Let's get into this. Mind, body, and soul. Mind, body, and soul. It's year 2022. We coming to the end, y'all. We in next week, November. Coming to the end of the year. 1,440 minutes you get every day out of the 24 hours. 1,440 moments. Enjoy each one of those 1,440 moments you get each and every day. Today's mind, body, and soul. If you get tired, learn to rest, not to quit. If you get tired, learn to rest, not to quit. Everything I thought about, I was going to talk about with this quote right here today, just went out the window. Because right now my mindset is still on Mr. Hastings and the 38 years he served. And there's times where we're out here, we go to our jobs, we get tired, and I'm about to quit this job, I'm about to quit this, or things get a little bumpy, a bumpy road out there where we don't feel like we can push through, and we come up with all these excuses on why we won't do this and why we won't do that, but we don't quit. And the one thing I think about right now when I read this quote after this last segment was, Mr. Hastings didn't quit. Knowing that nobody believed him other than probably his family or anybody like that, but knowing he was behind those bars for 38 years and now finally being released for something he didn't do, he didn't quit. I'm sure he got tired, but he took rest. He woke up the next day and kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting. See, we're at a point in our lives now. Most of us that are my age, we're over the 50 mark. That listen to the show. If you're over that 50 mark, and as much as we don't like to talk about it, we got more years behind us than we have in front of us. Let's just analyze it. But there's times at this point where we get tired of the job, we get tired of what's going on in the world, we get tired. But we just need to take that rest, shut down for a minute, move away from all those things that are wearing you down. Just don't quit. When we talk about things that are going on in this world, the things that are done against us, the things that we don't think we can see a better way, don't quit. See, we tend to forget about all of our ancestors. We talk about slavery, but we don't really go into the fact of what they went through. We talk about the civil rights movement, but we really don't think about what they went through. There's people out here who fought those fights for us to be in the position we are now because they didn't quit. That's why we're here now. Think about if Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, think about if Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would have quit. What if Malcolm X would have quit? What if Rosa Parks would have quit? Frederick Douglass would have quit. All the people you can think through our ancestry that we talk about and we put on this pedestal because of the fight they fought to get us where we're at now. I want you to think if one of those people would have quit, how different would things be right now? How different would the Voting Acts Right look compared to what they're trying to do to it? And look at where it was at one time where we couldn't even vote. Look at the things Frederick Douglass did if he would have just quit and not done what the 4th of July means to the Negro. How many people would have never understood how unbalanced the thought processes of us celebrating the 4th of July when we were slaves at that time? Think about if he would have quit. Think about if Rosa Parks would have quit or if she would have gotten up. See, all these things that we think about through our lives and our daily basis, when we look through our ancestry and we don't know all the slaves' names, we don't know all the people that were brought over on those ships, we don't know all the people that have been lynched and killed because they wouldn't quit. But they didn't quit. And we stand on their thoughts, their memories, their backs of what they were fighting for that we choose, that we get to enjoy right now. So when you're tired, take a rest. When you're tired, pull yourself away from something. When you're tired, lay down. When you're tired, take that vacation. When you're tired, shut it down. Recharge your battery. But don't quit. If we were to quit right now, with everything we've been fighting for over and over and over again, because here's one thing I think we don't take into account consistently. Everything that we're out here fighting for right now, we're not fighting for us. We're fighting for our grandkids, our children, our grandkids, our great grandkids, and so on and so on and so on. The slaves, the Frederick Douglasses, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, the Harriet Tubmans, the Malcolm X's, all those people that fought and fought back then, they weren't fighting for themselves. They were fighting for us. Now it's our turn to fight for our next generations to come. Things have changed. And the only thing that's truly changed in the concepts of the way in which they try to minimize the rights that we have. We have to change with their change. We have to change the way we approach it. We have to change the way we combat it. And we have to change the way we think about those that look like us who haven't come to the realization that those changes that they support that they're doing aren't conducive to who we are and who their children are and their grandchildren are and their great-grandchildren will be. The changes that we have to make while we continue to push forward are going to benefit those behind us. They might not happen right now, but we got to keep pushing. If you get tired, learn to rest. Just don't quit. Just don't quit. Let's go ahead and wrap this up for today. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hey, 10 days to election day. Do your early voting. If you got early voting, drop it off. Do what you got to do. Let's get this thing together, man. Let's get out there. Let our voices be heard. Do your due diligence. Make sure if somebody needs help getting to the polls, take them to the polls. Somebody needs that little help filling out the ballot, help them fill out the ballot. Do the right thing. Do it the right way. And be cognizant that there's people out here that are going to be out there trying to prevent you and others from getting to the polls to do their thing. If you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. That's what it comes down to. This election is going to affect a lot of things depending on which way it goes. And until we know which way it's going to go, there's really no fighting we can do yet. We just need to be prepared for the fight. So get in the gym, start doing that sparring, get your batteries recharged. Because as of November 8th, after the results come out, we still got work to do. Whether we get the win for certain people putting in office or whether we don't, we still got to keep on fighting day after day. It don't stop November 8th. We just got to keep doing our due diligence. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Oh, and going into November, I have 2 interviews set up. I don't know the exact dates yet, so I'm working those out. But during Veterans Day, I'm highlighting 2 veterans that I was stationed with that are doing big things in the community. 2 guys that you've never seen on the show before, so they'll be new to you. But I got 2 guys that have been coming on. I'll get those dates out. I'll start posting that once I firm up the dates with them. But we're gonna keep doing what we do, y'all. We're gonna keep doing what we do, keep pushing, and hey, let's keep rolling. Let's keep doing what we got. We got coming to the end of the year. Get all those things in that you're supposed to do. Celebrate these holidays, enjoy yourself, and love up on each other. As I always say before I sign off, love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely, keep your faith in God. I'm out. I'll see y'all again next week. And I appreciate y'all for tuning in. It's the Speak on the Show with your boy R.W. Coolins, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific every Saturday morning. And I'm out. Holla at me.